Hello everyone and welcome back to Gwimb Discusses 40k Things. Alright, so today's something a little different, and today I'm going to embarrass myself, because I was looking through some of my old hard drives, and I discovered a hard drive full of old notes about 40k stories, ideas and things, and one of the files on it said 11th Legion. So I clicked it, had a look, the memories came flooding back, and I remembered, oh right. So ages upon ages ago, I made my own fictional 11th Legion, which, speaking to people on my Discord, I'm glad I'm not the only one that made my own unknown legion. It's kind of embarrassing, but the fact that other people have done it too is kind of comforting. So I thought, for the sake of my own humiliation, that I would share it with you here. So this is the super condensed version. In fact, this is the third time I've attempted this. The first video was about 40 minutes. Second video I got it down to 20. So we're hoping to get it under 10 at this point. So, we shall begin. My hypothetical 11th Legion I've created. We're just going to start with the Legion, then the Primarch, then the Crusade, and then how shit went wrong. So the hypothetical 11th Legion was recruited from the Pan-Pacific and Sub-Antarctic regions of Terra. And they were tasked with clearing and conquering Jupiter and Saturn ahead of the Great Crusade's advance, meeting up with the Jovian Void clans and the Saturnian warrior castes, and they became experts at void warfare. Now, I'm not talking about the Imperial Fists, who are experts in void warfare and sieges. No, the Void Knight, or the Void Walkers, as they were originally called, were entirely void-focused. In fact, there were rumours that some members of the Legion had never stepped forth on a planet since they were inducted into the Legion. So they had a very large fleet, but above that, every single warrior of the 11th was a pilot. So they had Panthera-class fighters, Xiphons, Thunderbolts, Avengers, Marauders, basically every type of aircraft you could imagine, and every type of ship you could imagine. So they were entirely a void-based legion, and their goal was to, similar to the White Scars, were to go ahead of the Crusade's main advance and deal with any void threats. So they found themselves taking on Eldar craft worlds, space hulks conquered by orcs, that sort of thing. So a lot of void combat. They also, of course, boarding combat as well, but it was more specialized in being shipmasters than being actual boarding specialists. So, that's what the 11th Legion were doing before their Primarch showed up. Now, their Primarch himself, just pulling up the notes, here we go. The Primarch himself was named Azrael, and yes, I am quite aware that there's an Azrael of the Dark Angels. However, previous me, and let's be honest, current me, really love the name because there's actually multiple translations for it. It means Angel of Death, it means Helper of God, it means Angel of the Heavens. Depending on what translation you go for, it has so many different meanings, which is why I like the name. And it just sounds cool. Azrael. It just sounds awesome. So, young baby Azrael crashed upon the feudal world of Aquitaine in the southwest corner of the Imperium. He crashed into the ocean, actually, off the northernmost kingdom and the northernmost county, whereupon the count basically saw, a meteor strike the ocean, took a boat out and found the pod, and adopted the young child as his own, believing him to be an angel from God, sent to reward him for his hard work and to bring the kingdom to greater glories. So, the young Primarch was raised, basically, by the count, was taught war, was able to wrestle bears at the age of 3, master every type of weapon, and basically by 10 years old he was a fully grown adult. Looks, he was short, about a head taller than Alfarius. He was thin and wiry, but every part of him was muscle. There was not a single wasted, there was no fat, there was no excess flesh. It was thin, wiry muscle. Long flowing red hair and blazing green eyes. Think of a Irish barbarian sort of thing, like an Irish barbarian king. That sort of aesthetic. that we're going for in terms of visuals. And the kingdom he landed in, picture medieval, early Renaissance France as a guiding point. So they had matchlock firearms, but they still had knights and swords and shields and counties and, rulers and aristocrats and that sort of thing. So, young Azrael was raised by his adopted father, along with a full family. So he actually had a stepmother and stepsisters and a stepbrother, which put him alongside Gilliman in having a more stable family upbringing. So blah blah blah, did that whole upraising thing, until his presence was revealed to the rest of the kingdom, whereupon the king, who in the tradition of medieval kings was basically a tyrant, inbred tyrant, decried him as an abomination and ordered his immediate execution. Well, Azrael's stepfather basically went to see the king to sort this whole thing out, trying to convince the king that, this boy was a gift from the heavens. He was a child sent to aid the land. Whereupon Azrael's stepfather was tortured and killed. So Azrael did the classic Primarch thing, raised a militia, then raised an army, then raised a bigger army, and ousted the king, and then took the army off to deal with the kingdom's enemies, while a council of nobles was set up to administer and run the nation in his absence. So, of course, the Primarch, created a new model army, gained, fame, influence, won great historical victories, blah 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 blah, while the council of nobles basically pulled the High Lords of Terror and turned into squabbling, infighting bastards, more concerned with their own power and their own wealth than the welfare of the kingdom. And they kept passing more and more laws restricting the young Primarch until they basically confiscated all of his lands and confined him to his castle. So when he returned and discovered all of these laws and shit, he was a bit pissed. However, the young Primarch was always taught in the value of human freedom. So he believed that people should be free to run themselves. He believed in democratic process and human freedoms, and he didn't really want to influence that. Because remember, he was raised religious, and while he didn't actually believe he was a son of God, he did kind of believe it, sort of thing, and he believed that he should be detached and let humanity run itself, sort of thing. So basically he just went back to his castle and sulked for 6 months, and in his absence the kingdom basically turned into the Imperium, infighting, squabbling, rebellions, division, external threats, until after 6 months of sulking and only talking to his stepmother and stepsisters, some of the more sane nobles kicked his door down and basically said, "You need to be king, this shit's gone on too far." And after reluctantly agreeing, Azrael basically again did the Primarch thing, kicked out all of the nobles, conquered the kingdom, declared himself king, and then basically went around conquering and uniting the planet. And which is where the Emperor finds him. So, just to go back, one of the earliest themes, and one of the themes I've written down on these notes here with the Primarch, is the idea of freedom versus control, because he himself believes in human freedom above all else. He was taught that way, and it's just that's one of the things that the Emperor's kind of imparted upon him, the idea that humanity should be free to run itself. It should be uplifted so it can be enlightened, to run itself. However, that contrasts with his own experiences of, he gave humanity, he gave his kingdom freedom, and they just immediately went to squabbling and, petty power struggles, and it needed a firm hand, a firm boot upon it to keep it running. So one of his personality motive, crises is the idea of freedom versus control. He wants people to be free, but he also accepts that you need someone with strong reins on the, to keep things going. So that was one of the main themes I have for this young Primarch, which will come back later. So, basically, he's been king for about 10 years, and young Azrael conquered his planet. And that is when a crusade force of Dark Angels arrive, seeing the planet's perfect for colonization, seeing that there's humanity upon it, seeing that it was a human colony. Oh yes, it reminds me. The planet's method of dealing with the Age of Strife was to dump its technology. So all of their psychers, they still have psychers on the planet. In fact, psychers are inducted into the priesthood, and those that, express psychic gifts that refuse are executed. So it's kind of their way of controlling psychers, but psychers are still part of the population. But they're basically treated as holy priests, really. So that's how the planet Aquitaine survived the Age of Strife. But anyway, Dark Angels show up, land on the capital planet, meet with the king, and recognize that he's a Primarch and go, oh, shit, you're a Primarch. Because, as I said, Azrael's one of the last few found. I think it goes the 11th Primarch, then Corax, then Alfarius, in terms of rediscovery. So one of the last to be rediscovered. Dark Angels show up, go, oh shit, you're a Primarch. Immediately report it to Lionel Johnson. The Lion is a bit too busy doing his own things, so he reports it immediately to the Emperor. And about 2 months later, the Emperor, Rogel Dawn, and Horus Lupercal show up. There's celebrations. The young Azrael pledges himself to the Imperium, because, again, fitting in with his theme, when he hears about the Emperor's goal to uplift humanity, he's absolutely, completely in favor of it. And also seeing the Emperor in charge of it, it also appeals to his desire for someone strong to be at the reins of power. So the Emperor basically fits both of his warring factions inside his conscience. So, yep. So basically swears loyalty to the Emperor. Oh yes, a little anecdote here. I won't do too many of the stories and the little sub-stories, like how Primarch got his gun from Ferrus Manus or anything like that. But the young Azrael's nickname was the Prince, from a statement of his when he was talking to his father, saying that I believed myself a king, but in your presence, my father, my emperor, I see now I am little more than just a prince. So that's where he got his nickname of the Prince from. So, Prince Azrael accepts command of the Voidwalkers Legion. He spends about a year in the company of, he spends about 2 months in the company of the Emperor, because this is late in the Crusade and the Emperor's got shit to do. But he spends about a year with Dawn, who teaches him, how the Crusade works, how the Imperium works, how to fight, all of that sort of stuff. Basically, how, Fulgrim was mentor to Conrad, Dawn was the mentor to Azrael, and which also helped to facilitate, learning void warfare and stuff. And Azrael accepts command of the 11th Legion. Now, at this point, the young Primarch Azrael had never seen a void ship. He had never even, he'd barely even seen real ships, considering there were a few oceans upon his planet. Most of them were small inland seas or large lakes. So he basically took the command of not actually accepting command of his legion, leaving that command to the Legion Master for the first year of him being reunited with the Voidwalkers, until Azrael felt that he had known enough to take command of the Legion. Whereupon he took command of the Legion, basically said goodbye to Dawn, and went off doing his own thing. Crusaded upon the the southwestern fringes of the Imperium, basically battling void enemies, finding planets for compliance, that sort of thing. Classic Crusade stuff. Notable achievements. I have written here, destroyed an Eldar craft world, which I think is doable, like a minor Eldar craft world with a ship or with a fleet or something would be pretty cool. But there you go. Oh yes, ship's name, Gloriana class battleship Serenity's Wrath, and I have written on these notes, giant aircraft carrier. So I kind of like the idea of a Gloriana that's more of a aircraft carrier than it is, say, Perturabos, which is a floating gun platform. So that's kind of cool. Alright, this is where shit starts going wrong. And by the way, this entire story is the super condensed version. Trust me, there's shitloads of little things here, like he got a twin-barrel Volkite pistol as a gift from Ferrus Manus. I've got him meeting Conrad Kurz, him meeting Angron. There's shitloads of notes here. but to keep things under 500 years, we're going to keep this shit short. So, this is where shit starts going. Oh, I will spout and go. Primarch's armaments, just for the sake of things. He had, of course, a master-crafted set of power armor in the style of Renaissance, late medieval, early Renaissance armor. So not like the Lion's armor, which definitely has medieval tinges to it, but a few more curved plates, and one of those pointed helms, almost like the Mark 6 Corvus armor pattern. So that's for armor. For weapons, he had a twin-barreled Volkite pistol given to him by his brother Ferrus Manus, and he has a rapier, because I like the idea of a slashing, poking sword rather than, a big claymore or a broadsword like the other Primarchs had. Alright, shit starts to go wrong. They come across a series of dead worlds, completely bereft of life, nothing on them, black and ash. Landing upon the world at the center of this cataclysm, young Azrael finds a black blade sticking out of a altar. The Black Blade of Antwar. Yes, that Black Blade. The same Black Blade the Grey Knights had to deal with all those years later. Well, of course, not being inducted into chaos, into the dangers of chaos, and not really knowing what this shit means, he pulled a Fulgrim and took the sword. Well, this did not go down too well. And basically, over the next 25 years, the sword basically spoke to all of his insecurities, so it fed his desire to dominate, it fed the part of his brain that said humanity, can't be trusted. And when the sword started telling them about the dangers of chaos, and about how humanity, how susceptible humanity is to it, and especially, humanity left to its own devices always ends up falling to chaos, humanity can't be trusted. Basically, the young Primarch started killing every single human he encountered. He started exterminating worlds, butchering life, even purging most of the mortals from his own fleet that weren't corrupted already. Because the desire to basically, dominate humanity, and the desire and the idea that humanity can't be trusted with free will had basically ripped and gotten his grasp into him at this point. So basically turned full-blown chaos. Well, eventually an Imperial fleet was sent out to investigate the reports of the 11th Legion annihilating everything they came across, and met the 11th Legion fleet. Even those who aren't tainted by chaos could see shit was going wrong at this point, and the 11th Legion opened fire and destroyed them, with only a single ship escaping back to Terra, whereupon they warned the Imperium what was going on, and the Imperium sent Valdor and the Adeptus Custodes alongside the entire 6th Legion and the 1st Legion. There they engaged the 11th in a massive void battle, ending with the Primarch's flagship's shields being taken down and Russ boarding it, whereupon Russ and Azrael fought sword to sword. The Black Blade, of course, giving, the young Primarch massive amounts of strength, and when Azrael scored a wound upon Russ, cutting deep into his shoulder and drawing blood, it was the drawing blood from one of his brothers that finally shook him out of his chaos-induced madness, and he basically, warp portals and warp stones were ripping all across the fleet at this point. So Azrael grabbed the sword and threw it into the void, which also, I like previous me's historical notes here, explains why the sword wasn't around during the Horus Heresy. Very nice, previous me. So yeah, he basically threw the sword away, threw to his knees and wept, upon which Russ basically put a hand on his shoulder and then rammed his sword in between his primary hearts, killing him. The 11th Legion was basically annihilated and broken up, upon which the survivors were inducted into the Ultramarines. Although, with the new law we know now, I would probably, and considering the closeness between Dawn and Azrael, I would probably throw the Imperial Fists into taking some of the 11th Legion. The Primarch's homeworld was Exterminatus, and all records and traits traces of the 11th Legion were destroyed. The 1st Legion and the 6th Legion were mind-wiped to get rid of what had happened, and the Imperium went on as it did. So, yeah, basically that's my very abridged story of my hypothetical 11th Legion. Oh yes, one last thing I just saw the notes here. Azrael was friends with Dawn, Sanguinius, and Horus, and he was not the biggest fan of Kurz or... what's that name? Oh, Alfarius. So, yeah, there you go. So yeah, that's my super abridged lore. It's actually more embarrassing because I even have written down on like pages 7, 8, and 9 what would happen if Azrael lived throughout the Horus Heresy, what side he would support, and how he would eventually disappear after the heresy. So if you actually want me to go into detail about that aspect of this, then maybe I will embarrass myself a little bit further with this. But yeah, there you go. So did you ever create your own hypothetical Lost Legion? Let me know in the Discord or, down in the comments below. I'd actually be fascinated because, again, I was talking to one of the people on the Discord, and they were saying how they created an Archer Primarch, like a bow and arrow, and I think that's pretty cool, like a long-range focused Primarch. So, no, there's some pretty cool stuff and pretty cool ideas out there. So, thank you very much for indulging me. I have to get to my next uni class in half an hour, so I was cutting this kind of late. And I shall see you all again another time.